It's Monday, March 14th, 2011, and you're watching This Week in Linux News. Apologies for the delay. We had a long weekend here, we had a lot of stuff going on, so things just got pushed back. I'm definitely going to be fixing my schedule, my time management, and we'll get things back on track here right now. This last week and a couple of days saw several distros having releases or minor updates. ZenWalk Linux version 7.0 release candidate 3 became available this week. If you're not familiar with ZenWalk, it is a Slackware-based distribution that comes with XFCE pre-installed, and it comes with one package per type of application. So it comes with one web browser, one instant messenger, things like that, so people don't get confused when they're using it. It also comes with a decently easy-to-use package manager, so if you've ever been interested in trying out Slackware, it might be worth giving ZenWalk a look. In an interesting turn of events, and not exactly a Linux distro release, Linux from Scratch version 6.8 released this week. Linux from Scratch, if you're not familiar with that, is basically a book that tells you how to build your own Linux distribution from the ground up, from scratch as it were. So if you've ever been interested in learning a ton more about how a Linux distribution works, or possibly making your own, I don't know why you would want to, but just in case you do, go ahead and check out Linux from Scratch. Peppermint Ice version 2011-03-02 released. If I remember correctly, this is a rolling release, so it's just a respin of the image that you would download. The major changes that come along with this version are complete removal of the HAL, the hardware abstraction layer, which most major modern distros are doing at this point, and removal of several different site-specific browser type applications such as Hulu and Pandora. However, the applications removed can be very easily added back in through the ICE application. That's really what makes Peppermint OS unique. If you're interested in an operating system for your netbook that's Ubuntu-based but deals a lot in the cloud, Peppermint is definitely an interesting way to go. I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I'll have a link to where you can download it down below. In a move you don't commonly see out of a rolling release distribution, Gentoo Linux version 11.0 came out. However, this is version 11.0 of the live DVD that you can use to get the full experience of Gentoo without actually having to spend several hours compiling things and getting it all running. But basically it's just a snapshot of what Gentoo can be whenever you configure it appropriately as of right now. So if you'd like to try that out, again, go ahead and check out the DVD. Foresight Linux version 2.5.0's release candidate came out this week. Previously, we talked about Foresight Linux when they had an alpha available. I think it was the alpha. They've skipped beta and they've gone straight to the release candidate. And they've gone, instead of just having GNOME, they've actually got GNOME, XFCE, and KDE based versions in x86 and x86 64 versions. If you don't remember, I talked about Foresight Linux a while back. I'll put a link to the video where you can check it out. Slackware Linux also had a minor update this week to version 13.37 release candidate 1. And in another interesting turn of events this week, Jolly Cloud renamed its normal OS to Jolly OS, and version 1.2 is now available. Jolly Cloud, Jolly OS, whatever you want to call it, is another netbook-based, cloud-based distribution. So if you'd like to try that out, go ahead and check out the videos that I've made on versions 1.0 and 1.1. I might be taking a look at 1.2 sometime soon, but my docket for distro reviews is kind of full at the moment. Moving constantly forward, Bodhi Linux version 0.1.7 is also available this week. They've made a couple of changes to applications that come pre-installed. As an example, instead of getting Chromium, which I think was what was on it before, it's now got Midori as the default internet browser. This is going to be the final development release of Bodhi Linux before they go to the final stable build, and then they will start building upon that toward the next release. And of course, one of the biggest distribution release stories of the week, OpenSUSE version 11.4 released this week. Now, the one really interesting thing that I found about OpenSUSE 11.4 so far is that they're going to give you the option to have a rolling release distribution. Now, let me say that again. You're going to have the option to have a rolling release distribution. This is actually something that's kind of new, kind of different. I know with Debian, you can enable the testing repo and just constantly be rolling and staying up to date, or you can stay on stable and be a little bit behind. This is OpenSUSE taking itself in an entirely new direction, though. It's giving the user the option to either have 11.4, 11.5, whatever else down the road, or you can enable the rolling release distro and not actually have to reinstall every now and again. I believe OpenSUSE 11.4 is going to be my next review, so keep an eye out for that. And the final distro that's being released, and I know there were a ton that we talked about this week, is Fedora 15 Alpha came out this past week. You may have noticed I put out a video on it on this channel, giving the initial overview, the first look at it. If you haven't seen it already, I'll have a link over here, an annotation and all that, so do make sure to check that out when this video is complete. Now with Fedora 15 Alpha, they did include GNOME 3, and it was a pre-beta version that was available. However, after you installed Fedora 15 Alpha, they had an update that pushed it up to the beta. Well, since that time, Beta 2 has become available. There are really not many changes from Beta 1 to Beta 2. I believe we talked about Beta 1 in previous video. There were just a couple of minor differences, but basically this Beta 2 is just bug fixes and some translation updates above and beyond Beta 1. In another bit of interesting news, one of the first and only, I believe, GNOME Shell themes became available this week. From an article on webupdate.org, they've got a link to a DeviantArt profile where you can go ahead and download this theme. If you don't want the plain black panel and all of the really dark inset stuff, you can have a lighter, I guess a more friendly looking theme with some more consistent icon theming. The great thing about this though is it does set the stage for a lot more themes to be created. It's just a little bit difficult to install the theme currently. You have to manually copy things into specific directories to make it happen. Alright, keeping things rolling, this week Mark Shuttleworth announced the name of the next version of Ubuntu that's coming out. It's going to be called Oneric Ocelot. According to Shuttleworth's blog, the name Oneric means dreamy, and of course Ocelot, he says, is a disciplined animal, so it's going to be a dreamy, disciplined release, which is a little bit of a contradiction, if you ask me. However, I am interested to see how they make that happen, and hopefully they will have something going as far as Wayland with 11.10. Now, as you may or may not have noticed, over the last week or two, a lot of people have been having issues with Adobe Flash 10.2 crashing constantly. I know I've had it myself on Linux and Windows, basically every single system that I touch. If I open more than one YouTube video at the same time, both of them end up crashing. My guess is Adobe's decided to go ahead and deal with this. They've gone ahead and released version 10.3's beta this week. According to Phoronix, there really isn't much in terms of release notes for it, but hopefully it will take care of all the crashiness that we've been seeing. In a bit of news, and not really news that I would call terribly exciting, Google's Chrome version 10 released this week. I'm sorry, I hate to say it's not terribly exciting, but like I said a lot of times before, Google is releasing new versions of their Chrome browser every few weeks, so it's really, yeah. As long as there aren't huge changes, it's not going to be big news. However, they did enable GPU accelerated video in this one. They're now allowing web apps to run in the background, and they've enabled password sync with encryption. So if you put your password in one browser, you turn it on in the sync, you can have it encrypted and sent across the world to all of the rest of your browsers running Chrome. It's just a matter of convenience. If you really want to do it, you can. I don't know if I'd be so inclined to do so, but you know, it's entirely up to you. And since we're talking about releases, we've talked about a lot of different things that have been released this week. We've talked about it before. There's a game called Zero AD that's been in the works for, I believe, 10 years now. And within the last year, they open sourced it. And from that time, they've gone from having nothing publicly available to having now 4 public alphas available. In this latest public alpha that released this week, they've improved performance, they've improved rendering, they've added opponent AI, even though it's still a prototype state. That's a huge step up there. They've added some animal AI, they've added fog of war improvements, just all over, lots and lots of improvements. So if you'd like to go ahead and try out Zero AD, highly recommend it. It looks like it's going to be an amazing game. So go ahead and download it. I will have a link down in the show notes in the source code below. Alright, let's talk a little bit about Android news. This week, Adobe announced version 10.2 of their Flash Player will be coming to the Android marketplace on March 18th. That's just about 4 days from right now when I'm filming. The player should be available for all Android devices running Android 2.2, Froyo, or 2.3 Gingerbread, providing that they meet the specified requirements. It's also going to be available as a beta for 3.0 hardware, a beta I assume because they're working on version 3.0.1 of Honeycomb to help integrate all of that together and make Flash work well on the Honeycomb devices. But basically it's going to be Flash 10.2. We should see some significant CPU usage reduction. We should see better performance all over. So hopefully this is going to help all of the mobile devices have a little bit better Flash playback. And speaking of Android and mobile devices and everything, when the iPad 2 released the other day, Verizon decided to go ahead and drop the price of the Samsung Galaxy Tab. I believe previously it was $499 or $599 at Verizon. All of the other major providers were dropping it to $250 or $200. Verizon's gone ahead and jumped on board. It's now $199 with a 2-year contract. Additionally, there was a bit of a leak this week. Don't know if it's 100% guaranteed or not, but I saw it on several different news sites. The Samsung Galaxy Tab 7-inch model, wireless only, is supposed to be coming at the beginning of April, I believe April 4th. It's supposed to have a $400 price tag on it, and at the same time, on March 27th, the Motorola Xoom wireless only should be coming as well at a $600 price tag. So I'm curious, if you've been holding off on picking up a tablet, would a $400 to $600 7 to 10-inch device be interesting to you? That price point is still way too high for me, so probably not in my case. Speaking of which, I was actually out at Kohl's last night and I picked up a bit of a new device that I'm going to be doing an unboxing of here very soon. This is the Pan Digital 7-inch novel e-reader. I've been using it for the last day or so, and I've got the unboxing film, just have to edit and upload that as well. Anyway, back to the Android-related news. We talked a little while back about Netflix working their way to some Android-based phones. Well, according to Hulu, they're going to be bringing their Hulu Plus service to some Android-enabled devices very, very soon as well. According to their site, on their list of available devices where you can get Hulu, it says Android 2.2 phones. We can only assume that this means 2.2 onward, and my guess would be because of all the DRM restrictions, the same kind of things Netflix has put out there, that it will only be on certain ones in the beginning. Again, though, very, very nice to see some of these digital content providers putting their stuff out there for Android-based devices as well. Moving away from Android news, but still sort of on the mobile news side of things, HP has announced in the last week or so that they're planning on moving all of their future desktops, laptops, pretty much everything as far as I understand it, to their HP WebOS, which is previously known as Palm's WebOS. That's not to say that you're only going to be able to get WebOS on it, it's just saying that every device that they ship will eventually have WebOS on it. So even if you buy a Windows 7 powered computer, it will probably have a version of Linux on it as well. Do you think this is going to be a good thing for the Linux market? Do you think it's going to turn a lot of people away from HP? I'm curious to know what your opinions of this are. Personally, I haven't tried out WebOS in a very long time. I tried it on a friend's Palm Pre a long time ago, and it was kind of impressive at the time. I kind of like Android a little bit better, and I think he does now at this point too. But from seeing some of the information coming out about the upcoming HP tablet, it does look like they've made some significant improvements to WebOS, so I don't know. I could see it working on a desktop. I could see it working as a splash top type replacement. Again, just let me know what you think about that in the comments below. And the last story for today, finally, Opera says that they're coming out with a mobile web store similar to the one on Android or on Apple's marketplace. However, it's going to be available for all mobile platforms. And from the article I read, they make it sound like they're going to be incorporating Apple's App Store, Google's Marketplace, all into one place. So you go to the Opera Marketplace, you can get Opera apps, you can get Android apps, or you can get Apple apps, and those last two based upon the device that you've got. However, if you've got a Windows Mobile phone, this will definitely give you more options. I don't know if they mentioned Windows Mobile as having the apps integrated into it as well or not. But again, if you have something that will run Opera, then you will be able to connect to this and pull down applications as one centralized repository. I have to say, it's not something I really expected coming out of Opera, but it is definitely interesting to have more options. Do you think this is going to cause fragmentation, where developers are going to be developing their apps for another place to put them? Or are they going to start developing them just for Opera and having Opera push them out to Apple and Android-based devices? I don't know. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always though, thank you so much for watching. Keep an eye out for the Pan Digital unboxing. I should have that up in the next day or so. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.